why I'm against under-inflating your basketballs. I'm Tony, welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
Himself, feds trying to tap my line. You can't understand how I get it, it's my grind. Putting overtime, now we talking, that's some drive. I wanna be the greatest when I die, if not alive.
So I'm making this video as a reply to a comment I got on my video about why I think you should over-inflate your basketballs. What about the idea that lower inflated balls condition you to dribble harder, resulting in a faster dribble with regular balls, or otherwise building up your forearm strength? Well, I'd say it's just a matter of personal preference, right? It depends on what you prefer, usually depending on what works best for you. And I definitely always endorse finding out what works best for you when doing that. So if having your ball underinflated is a way for you to strengthen your forearms and make your dribble faster so that when you get to games and competition with regularly inflated basketballs, you feel better, stronger, more equipped than you normally would to play that game, then I encourage you to do that if that's what works best for you. When it comes to the inflation of the ball, if it's underinflated, that would drive me crazy, because when it comes to being a pass first point guard, right, I am kind of a control freak in that specific role. Not really in the rest of my life, but just specifically in that role on the court, right? I need to have as much control as I possibly can. And that means I need to control the basketball as much as I possibly can. So if the ball's underinflated and it doesn't really bounce and have responsiveness the way I need in order to control the ball, if that happened in a game where I come across strangers in a park and I get in a game and the ball's underinflated, like, I could adapt to that during that game, but to practice and train with an underinflated ball day after day on a regular basis would drive me crazy, because I wouldn't have the control over the ball, the responsiveness that I would want and need. However, if it works better for you to have the ball underinflated, forcing yourself to have that focus and that control, then that's fine. As long as you're making practice and training hard, which makes games and competition feel easier, then I'm down with whatever works for you. However, I will say that when you're talking about, dribbling the ball faster and like building up forearm strength because of that, first of all, in terms of forearm strength, I don't think it's going to make a difference that much when it comes to dribbling. I think in terms of strength in your forearm, I think that's going to apply more in terms of jump shots, making your jump shot stronger, maybe giving you further range. But in terms of dribbling, I don't think you're gonna need to worry about dribbling the ball faster. I'm not a big proponent of dribbling the ball faster than you really need to in a game. But if you're practicing with a softer ball, resulting in the fact that you have to dribble harder and thus faster, to me, another pillar of my personality is that I cannot stand waste. I can't have waste in any form. And when you're talking about dribbling a ball faster, be it in practice, and then, if you're dribbling in practice, I like to think like the way you practice, the way you train is the way you're going to end up playing. So if you're dribbling faster in practice and training, I'm assuming that's going to translate to the way you play games. So in games, you're going to be dribbling faster than normal. My problem with that is if you're dribbling faster in games, which can lead to over dribbling, right? Dribbling more than you need to me, that means you're wasting dribbles. The more you're dribbling the ball, because the faster you're dribbling the ball, that means you're giving your opponents more opportunities to steal the ball from you. Now, don't get me wrong, don't take it to the extreme where I'm like, you should barely be dribbling, or you should only dribble absolutely as much as you need to. I think you should dribble however it makes you comfortable, right? But what I'm saying is you shouldn't be forcing speed and thus more amount of dribbling, especially in games and competition, when you don't need to, because it gives your opponents the opportunity to then steal it from you. To me, that's like wasted over dribbling. Also, I read that keeping rubber balls towards the lower pressure range gives them a softer response that more closely resembles indoor balls and prevents injury. Overinflated basketballs are rock hard. This is where I would like to point out that I am old school, right? My my approach to the game, my mentality about the game, my process for learning and mastering the game is an old school process. And let me be clear, I'm not old school for the sake of being old school and thinking like, because I'm old school, everything beyond that, everything newer than that is bad. Old school is always better than anything newer. It's not like that at all. It's just that even when I was a player in the midst of my career, I felt like for that time I was even old school back then. And I'm old school only because the way I figured things out worked for me. So first of all, let's touch about how you said if you keep rubber balls softer, they feel like indoor balls. Well, the thing about that, first of all, this is an outdoor recreational channel, so I don't really try to simulate what like indoor conditions are like, or like indoor team basketball is like, in terms of like organized AAU high school basketball. Like, I don't try to simulate that at all. I recognize, I like, and I'm proud that like outdoor basketball is much different than indoor organized basketball. So that being said, I am not concerned with trying to make outdoor rubber basketballs feel like indoor leather basketballs. I like that there's a difference. Now, when you say, softer rubber basketballs, they feel like, indoor kind of leather basketballs, well, what you're saying is that like the ball feels soft and there's like cushion to the ball when you squeeze it, right? There's a little bit of give to the ball that indoor basketballs usually have that outdoor rubber basketballs don't necessarily have. But if you make the outdoor rubber basketball softer, it kind of resembles that indoor squishy, soft, cushiony feel. The reason the leather basketballs, indoor basketballs, have that feeling is because they're made of leather, and whether it be the leather is kind of thick, thus giving it kind of a squeezy, cushion to the ball, or be it because there's padding on the, inside the cover of the basketball, making it feel padded and giving it that little bit of squeeze and that little bit of give to it. That's why indoor leather basketballs feel that way. But in terms of how they bounce perfectly fine because they're inflated to as much as they're supposed to be. They're not under-inflated. The only way you can make an outdoor basketball feel squishy like that is by under-inflating it. But then it's not gonna bounce the way you want it to, the way you're used to it bouncing. Now, you can get rubber basketballs, let alone composite basketballs that do have that padding, that cushion, that sort of give to them. But if you're talking about just like standard, like kind of cheaper end rubber basketballs that don't have that cushioning, that don't have that padding, the only way you're gonna make an outdoor rubber basketball of that quality feel softer is by under-inflating it. And then of course you're gonna have those dribbling and those bouncing issues. In terms of keeping basketball softer and under-inflated in order to avoid injury by keeping them softer, it's my preference that the way you try to avoid injury is through skill, not by, trying to adjust the tools that you use to play a sport. You build those injury avoiding skills through experience. It's the same kind of idea as back in the day, in the earlier days of the NFL, when the players would wear leather helmets, right? They were wearing leather helmets, therefore they knew they couldn't just run head first into each other, because when they would do that, they were gonna hurt their heads because it was just leather covering their heads. So therefore they had to be careful. They had to be conscious. They had to concentrate, focus, prepare, plan how they were going to hit each other. They had to be careful how they were playing the game as to not get injured. Today, they don't have to really worry so much, not nearly as much, about injuring their heads when hitting each other, because in terms of injury, because the helmets are just so more advanced and technologically, that they don't really have to worry about injury when they hit their head on anything. If anything, they just have to worry about penalties, which you can make the argument that by doing so, it kind of makes them more reckless. If it weren't for, getting penalties by hitting someone with your helmet, then they would probably do that just because that's part of the game and part of their sport. When it comes to basketball, like, that's just part of the game. It's part of the sport. Like, you're going to jam your fingers from time to time. That's just gonna happen. It's inevitable. It's gonna happen to all players. It doesn't matter how soft the basketball is. If it's traveling fast enough when you jam your finger, right, you're gonna hurt it. You may sprain it. It's not a matter of how soft the ball is. It's the matter of what's the velocity of the ball when it jams your fingers. That's why I say injury prevention should be more about skill than adjusting the tools that you're using to play with. That's one of the reasons I emphasize learning, mastering fundamentals so much, because the more of a master of fundamentals you are, that means the more experience you have, that means the more second nature holding and using and handling, catching the ball is to you. The more familiar it is to you, the less likely you are to injure yourself. Now, of course, freak injuries can happen. It can happen to anybody at any time, but the sounder your fundamentals are, the more experience and skill you have, the less chance you have of that happening. Like, the better rebounder you are, the better your rebounding fundamentals are, the more experience you have, right? When you go up for a rebound in a crowd and you come down, it's very likely that you may land on someone's foot and turn your ankle because of it. If you don't have much experience, if you've never had that happen before, you could really injure and turn and hurt your ankle. But if you do have experience like that, if you do have good rebounding fundamentals, you do have good physical capabilities in terms of, like, okay, your feet are strong, your ankles are strong, your knees are strong, your hips are strong, everything's balanced, you have really good balance because of your basketball conditioning. If you find yourself in that same situation where you go for a rebound in a crowd and you come down on someone's ankle, but you do have experience, you do have skill, you are fundamentally sound, you will know and understand that when you come down on somebody's foot, you automatically adjust your weight so that instead of forcing the weight down on your ankle and thus, exacerbating that injury, you're able to sort of compensate and, like, lean into it, thus alleviating the weight that's on your ankle that would be getting turned. Like, you're still gonna turn your ankle, it's still gonna hurt, but you're probably not gonna have anywhere near the intensity of the injury that you would have if you didn't have that skill to know how to deal with landing on someone's foot in the first place. Having a softer basketball to try to avoid jamming your fingers on a hard basketball is like saying, if you're going up for that rebound in a crowd and coming down on somebody's ankle, oh, if my shoe had been tied tighter, or if I had a high top shoe on that was tied tightly, then I wouldn't have injured my ankle as much as I did. Instead of relying and trying to adjust the equipment that you're using to avoid injury, at least use that skill and experience in conjunction with having the right tools set to the right parameters that you need in order to try to avoid injury. That's why I think you shouldn't underinflate your basketball. I appreciate the thought that goes into that comment, right? It's the kind of thinking, the kind of mentality that I would have as a player. But like I said, it's just a matter of sort of personal preference. It's a matter of however you need to do it, however it works best for you to make practice and training harder, to make the games feel easier. I completely support that. But what I do want to try to avoid is, like, over dribbling, thus wasting dribbling, thus giving your opponents, more opportunities to steal the ball from you. And like I said, injury is just part of the game. Like, you shouldn't compromise the way you use your tools, like how much you inflate your basketball, to try to use that to avoid injury. Have that injury prevention come from preparation, from experience and fundamental skill. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, if you think it's going to help you inflate your basketball to what's ideal for you, what works best for you, then please subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure you hit that thanks button down below when you do. Every comment you make to let me know how you like your basketball inflated, every comment you make will stand out if you hit that it'll be highlighted, then it will stand out because you hit that thanks button. Not only that, but it directly supports the channel when you hit that button. So anybody who hits that thanks button, know I genuinely appreciate it. As always, like, share, comment like I said. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, I'll see you guys next week.
Top man of the year, game 6, no scrimmage, let it breathe. Let me kill it. Said I couldn't do it till the day I did it. I stay winning, got no limit. Live a hero, die a legend. Live a hero, die a legend.